the cloud.
Uh-oh, it's being recorded.
Listen, last warning, if you don't behave, I'll throw you out. You're not joining back in. This time I figured out how to do it. All right, y'all can see whenever you're ready.
We're ready? We ready now? Somebody's trying to get in, just texted me, he's trying to get in, Peretz. All right.
Yeah, I go, my fingers been overtime clicking admit.
Okay. Okay, I have to admit
I
to
work
you,
in a
thank
nursing
you.
home. That's usually what you want to say. But
All right, thank you for Peretz. Yeah, okay. Okay, so now that we
I know you were doing it so fast, you by mistake let me in.
Okay. Anyways, let's roll. Everybody, let's behave for all the guests, okay? For the daf, everybody could act up, okay? Okay, so now we're discussing koshering. Yeah, let's start with koshering the kitchen. Okay, before that, as a hakdama, which now that we're running late, so then we're can try and get everything in that I thought maybe to discuss. But so what's very popular out there in the world of social media is that because of the whole situation, everybody wants to be makel with Hilchos Paisach. Everybody's looking for the kulas, and there were a lot of kulas texted out and posted or whatever about this year. We want to make Paisach more makel, more lenient, so that it doesn't cause stress. That's 100% true. The main thing that we have to have nowadays is to have a peaceful house and nobody getting stressed out. The stress levels are high enough. That's 100% true. I think that there's no reason to ever get stressed for Hilchos Pesach, simply because if you do the halachas the way that they're meant to be, then there really should be no stress. Okay, for example, somebody asked me this morning, does he have to mop his floors? Now, I happen to have known the person, so it was a little, I know it's a stressful situation, so the answer is absolutely not. They do not have to mop the floors even for Pesach. As long as they sweep the floors and there's no chametz and you check the floors by Vedikas chametz, and you're going to be okay. You don't even have to mop it. Now, that being said, you should mop the floors if you can, but if it's going to cause tension, then you don't have to mop the floors. The main thing is not to have chametz on the floors, right? The main thing that we're looking for with chametz is not for crumbs. You don't have to worry about crumbs. Maybe in a book, which we'll get to, maybe in a book that you're checking or svarim that you're checking, you have to worry about crumbs if you're going to bring it to the table. But on the floor, certainly crumbs are not an issue. And even on shelves, really, crumbs are not an issue. Okay? Now, I'll just tell you one interesting halacha, just to show you how machmir we are. I'll present the question. I guess since we're all muted, nobody's trying to give me the answer. But this is a case in Shulchan Aruch is very straightforward. Somebody baked matzah in the same oven as chametz at the exact same time. Okay, what's the din? Can you eat that chametz? Can you eat the matzah, not the chametz? Right? So the answer is 100%. You can eat that matzah that was baked in the oven at the exact same time as the chametz. Okay, now that is, I would imagine most people, if that happened in their house, would not eat that matzah. Correct? But the halach is very clear that you can. Not only that, but even if the matzah touches the chametz and you bake it together, all you have to do is peel off a finger's worth, a thickness of a finger from the matzah, and then you just eat the rest of the matzah. Okay? I'm not saying you're going to try this at home, but if you did do this, then you're okay. So basically, there's a lot of halachas that we think that have to be ikar adin, and it's not. A lot of the things that we learn with Pesach are chumras, and we just have to make sure that we try and take it easy and just clean our house properly. I heard yesterday, B'Shem Moshe Feinstein, that he felt that it would take about 3 hours to prepare an apartment for Pesach from soup to nuts, from beginning to end. It would take about 3 hours to clean and fix an entire apartment. Now, most of us are houses, or many are in houses, so maybe it takes a little bit longer, but it doesn't have to be much more stressful than that. Another thing by way of hakdama is that a lot of people are making Pesach for the first time, and there's a lot of stress based on how much money that they have to spend on Pesach. The Gemara is very clear that any money that you spend on Yom Tov does not come out of your calculations for what Hashem decided for you on Rosh Hashanah. Well, Hashem decides how much money you get on Rosh Hashanah. That's excluding your expenses for Shabbos, for Yom Tov, Chol HaMoed even, and Rosh Chodesh, and what else? And Limud Torah, and learning for Torah. So all those that are worried about their tuition, they're not getting their tuition's worth, or they have to spend money on Paisach, all of that is l'kavod Yom Tov. That does not come out of your calculations for what you are going to get from your salary from Hashem that was nigzar on Rosh Hashanah, along with everything else that was nigzar on us. One last point that I thought of, that can you imagine, we're all going crazy in our houses and we're saying, oh, before Pesach, how could it be? Why is it before Pesach? I think that it being before Pesach is actually makes it a little easier because we're so busy with Pesach. Imagine if it wasn't Pesach, this was just Stam in the middle of the winter. We'd really have nothing to be going out of our minds that way. So at least we have Pesach, and there's a lot of extra Torah being learned because of Hilchos Pesach, tons of shiurim all over the internet about it. And it should be a schus for Klal Yisrael that they're trying to take everything in stride and trying to do everything kedas u'kedin. Okay, so now with the kitchen. Yeah, with the kitchen. So sinks, to kasher sinks, all you got to do is clean the sink, make sure it hasn't been used for boiling hot water for 24 hours. Most sinks are never used with boiling hot water. When we say boiling hot water, it's got to be at least over a temperature of 110 degrees, and it's got to be exclusively hot water. So basically, just got to make sure you don't drain any pasta, etc., those type of things in the sink. Then you'll be okay. Some people suggest going onto the bottom of the sink and shutting off the hot water so that you know for sure you won't use it for 24 hours. But you can use the sink, just not for boiling hot water, right? Using it for cold water is fine, and even warm water and even relatively hot water is also okay. Okay, we want to make sure you didn't use it for any hot, so we try and stay away from hot. The main thing you got to do, and for me, this is the hardest part of kashering the sink, is the dirt that accumulates in the sink. That's more of a problem. So you have to really try and scrub it, and the chatchila, you should scrub the sink before you wait the 24 hours, not after, even though you can scrub it after you wait 24 hours. Yeah, so then you make sure there's nothing dirty on it, and then you boil up hot water, and this is a mistake that sometimes people make, so they make a big pot of boiling hot water on the stove, and then what they do is they dip in a cup, and they take that cup of water and pour it onto the sink. That is no good, because that's already what we call a kli sheni. That's not gonna kasher it. You have to do it in a kli rishon. So basically, you got to take the pot off the water, off the fire, and then pour it all over the sink. Really, me'ikar adin, all you got to do is pour it straight all over the sink. We don't want you rolling the water on the sink. Meaning you can't pour it on one end of the sink and then let it roll to the other end. That doesn't work, right? So what you have to do is get each initial spot, which can be a little bit stressful. There's differences of opinion whether you should start from the bottom of the sink and move on the way up, or go start at the top and go on the way down. Either way you do it is fine. There is a different way that people do kashering the sink, and they don't have to worry about the initial pouring getting everywhere, and that's if you take an iron and you plug it in and leave it hot. Obviously, don't leave the wire in the water, so just leave it hot. Leave the iron plugged in near the sink, and make sure it's hot, and then pour the cold water all over the sink. The hot water, all over the sink. By the way, the sink has to be dry before you pour the water in. Again, dry. Pour the hot water all over the sink, and then iron it. You only have to iron the bottom of the sink. You don't have to iron the walls. Okay. What do you want to know? Whether a chametz pot or a Pesach pot? So you can either use a Pesach pot. If you use a Pesach pot to do this, then you should re-kasher it afterwards, which is just boiling it up with hot water afterwards. If you use a chametz pot, then really you could just use it straight. But the minhag is to kasher it first. Basically, what you do is boil hot water in it, then pour it out, and then re-boil hot water. Right? Okay.
If you're not going the ironing method and you're pouring water, do you have to hit the sides of the sink, or you don't have to at all?
You should hit the sides of the sink, yeah, but we don't have to be so worried about you should try and like splash it, like throw it like this onto the side of the sink so that it gets there in the initial pouring.
So if you use a kashering pot, do you have to kasher the pot afterwards?
If you use a koshering pot, are you going to use that pot on Pesach?
Not for food. Only for, I use it for koshering, just for
Then
koshering.
you don't have to kosher it after. Then you don't have to kosher it after.
Rabbi
Yeah?
Stein, Yaakov Tesser. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
What type of sinks work with that, what you just mentioned?
You want to say, what do you mean? We're assuming everything is metal, stainless steel. If it's a porcelain sink,
let's say
yeah,
a porcelain sink, let's say.
porcelain sink cannot be koshered. You got to just use an insert. You can't kosher porcelain, right?
What about a plastic?
Same. What do you mean? Plastic? We don't kosher plastic. I want to get to that soon about the koshering plastic. Okay.
If you're using an insert, then no koshering.
If you're using an insert, you don't have to kosher at all. You don't have to kosher at all. At least the sink, but the spout you do. See the spout and the handle. So then that's relatively easy. You just turn on the hot water, let it flow out of there, and then you let it flow out of the sink, and then you pour boiling hot water all over the spout, and that's enough. The aerator, which is the little piece that makes the water come out smooth, should be removed because we're afraid that little bits of chametz might get stuck in there and may fall into your food.
Do you have to use a pot, or can you use like a kettle?
You can use a kettle as long as the water boils. The water has to get to boiling before you kosher with it. Even though it's not going to be boiling, the second you take it off the fire, it's going to stop boiling. But it's got to have water that does boil. Microwaving the water doesn't work either, by the way. That's microwave.
I use a plug-in teapot.
Yeah.
That's really
good. Okay. Now with the spout.
What if your aerator is plastic and not removable?
Right. I was about to get to that. Thank you. Right. So now a lot of people have, the sinks, the kitchen sinks. You can use a brand new pot. Yes. A lot of people use these spouts that change the water from a shower to a steady stream and all that. That's rubber/plastic. Really, we don't rubber. We do kasher for Paisach. Plastic, we don't. But in this situation, you really don't have much of a choice. So what I would tell you to do is you take a pot of hot water, you bring it over to that spout. Usually they pull it out and dip it into the hot water, and that will kasher it. It would be better if you can somehow cover it with, they sell them in the stores, but it's a little difficult to get the stores now, so we're going to be as lenient this year as we can. They have these cotton covers that cover over the sink spout. That would be good if you could do that. Okay?
Rav Tzvi Yaakov?
Yes?
Yes, hi, Yoel Rosenberg. Can I use a cardboard cup to pour the hot water from an urn?
No, it has to come straight from the urn. Urns also may not work because urns don't boil water. A lot of the urns don't boil the water, right?
Does an urn have to be Paisach dict, or it has to be especially made?
No, it could be either one. It could be either one.
But what if it may have touched chametz? Can you just simply wash the outside?
Yes.
There never was chametz put in.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So that's basically the sink. Okay. Now
should you pour? Wait, one more question. Yeah. Should you pour a hot water? Should you pour a pot of hot water over it?
Yes.
If I were to, isn't that a bit dangerous?
It could be, but we'll get you on. You can discuss that with me privately later, okay? Because I want to get through to a lot of things.
Rabbi,
so text me or call me later.
Sorry, just a little confusion. The hose of the sink.
Yes, the hose of the sink does not have to be kosher. That doesn't come near the food. Usually, you keep the hose inside. For those few seconds that you pull it out on Pesach is not an issue. The hose of the sink doesn't need to be kosher. Only the head of the sink. Whatever can possibly come near chametz. Okay?
How about spray nozzle the end of the hose?
Spray nozzle at the end of the hose is a little tough. Many places can say not to use that on Pesach just because it's plastic and it's not necessary. So at least for the men, it's not necessary. I don't know about the women, may say it's necessary. But
just replace it, I guess, right?
Yeah, if you can replace it, great. I got fed up last year with the nerves of all this, and I have a Paisach nozzle and I just replace it. At least, I don't. My kids do. At least my kids are supposed to. Yeah. Okay.
If I were to use a klisheni, can I leave it in the boiling water for a certain amount of time? And use it
Yes, 100%. Yes, good question. If you leave the klisheni in the pot until it boils, then that would work. That would work. Yes. Okay, so that's the sink. Or you could just use an insert. If you choose to use an insert, which is what I do, I just take an insert and put it in there, and then you're okay. Also, what Paiskim do say is also doesn't make a difference which one you kasher first, the spout or the sink. Other Paiskim do say that you should also take some Drano and pour it down the drain, and I think that's a little bit of a chumrah, but that's okay. Yeah, okay. Counters are basically the same halacha as the sink, although the Aruch HaShulchan says that if it's a smooth counter, it doesn't have to be kashered at all. So, but where our minig is the kasher, the easiest way to do it is just pour hot water and then take the iron and run it all over the hot water, the same way that we said to do it like this. Then you don't have to worry about the water getting the initial pouring on everywhere. But that's only for granite or stone or quartz or whatever, any of those types of things that are made out of stone. Then that you can kasher. Even though there is a controversy amongst it's not a controversy, just a machlokes with the different kashrut agencies whether you can kasher quartz or not. I personally think you can kasher quartz, which is I think what most people say. You could also just you can just cover your counters, which Rabbi Belsky he held that you should just kasher. It's too complicated. I'm sorry, you should cover it, not kasher it. It's just too complicated. You just get pieces of plastic that should have some sort of thickness to it, and you just cover your counters, and you can actually use that from year to year if you save it and preserve it. If you get like that hard plastic, and then you could just save it from year to year. Many say to also cover the backsplash up a few inches. Also a big chumrah. So if that's a stress, don't do that. Okay, that Formica counters cannot be kashered, and you have to cover. Stoves, okay. Stove.
Can you just put aluminum foil on the counter?
You can, but you should use. Yeah, no, you can do aluminum foil, but the problem is that it rips. So you should either use thicker or double, or use double so that in case it rips. Now the stovetop. Now we discussed this before. I'm just going to say it again. There's a halacha that's very important to know just for the rules of kashrus, which is in Hebrew and Lashon Kodesh is called Ein Blia Yotzim Mikli Lekli B'Lo Roitev, which is that no food the taste cannot penetrate from one pot to another pot unless there's liquid in between. For example, so if I have a plate right here that has dairy in it, right, actual dairy in the plate, and then I have another plate with a cover. It's a covered plate, and I put it one right against the other. They're boiling hot. Again, this is a pot of meat, and then there's a pot of dairy. I put them right on top of each other, but there's no liquid in between the two. Okay, that nothing becomes treif. You can just take that milchix and eat it. You can take that fleishix and eat it. That applies to Paisach also. So if I had chametz right here in this pot, and then I had non-chametz, I had whatever matzah in this, and there's no liquid in between the two, then no way that the taste can penetrate between the two metals. That is a very important rule. We don't do that lechatchila. But b'diavad, there's no opinion as far as I know, no opinion that would say that your food is treif. Okay, so now let's analyze that. So if you have a countertop that had chametz on it a day before Paisach, boiling hot chametz on a day before Paisach, and then you didn't cover it at all, and you put your Paisach dika pot right down on top of it, right, and it was not wet, the counter. Is your Paisach pot becoming chametz? The answer is no, because there was no liquid there to have the taste to go from the counter into the pot. Same thing with the stovetop. If you never kashered your stovetop and you come into your house on Pesach and you decide to cook something, you 100% the food is perfectly kosher. Okay, that being said, we don't want to rely on this in the first place, so therefore we do kasher. But again, you don't have to get so stressed out about the kashering, because really the food is always going to be kosher in a b'diavad situation. Okay, so basically the simple way you got to do it is, since there's fire all over, the way you cook on a stovetop is that fire goes in to the metal, so you have to kasher with fire. So how do you do it? You got to spread the fire. So basically you just cover each burner with a pot or with some heavy duty foil. Turn on each burner one at a time. And the reason why you want to use metal to cover each burner is because you want it to spread the fire, and you turn it on for 10 to 15 minutes. Do one at a time. Don't do all four because it creates a lot of heat and can melt the edges of the oven, of the stovetop. And you just do each one for 10, 15 minutes, and that will kosher your grates. Alternatively, you could take those grates and put into the self-clean. Thing is, if you have an enamel-coated grates, then it might get ruined in the self-clean. So this is a much simpler, much easier way to kasher. The little discs don't need to be kashered at all because that's always covered by fire. So there's nothing to worry about that. That's very simple. It should take you no longer than a half hour, 40 minutes to kasher that stovetop. In between the stovetop, meaning the drip pans and all that, most are porcelain or porcelain lined. So therefore, even though they may be metal, but then they're covered with things. So therefore, you really can't kasher that. Although somebody asked me today, they have stainless steel. If you had stainless steel, and you would be able to kasher that just by pouring boiling hot water all over it, but most don't have that. So therefore, you just gotta cover the middle of the drip pan. I don't know how to post a picture, but I took a picture of what an oven should look like. Yeah, you know what? Maybe I'll try and show it on the screen there. Yeah, this is basically what you would want your oven to look like for Paisach. I don't know if you can see that, right? Yeah, you can see that relatively clear. Okay, again, the metal grates are kashered because you put a pot on top of it, and then everything else you cover with foil. The knobs, many people get stressed out with the knobs, right? If there's burnt pieces on the stainless steel, it's fine. As long as you put the fire on there, right? The knobs people get stressed out about, those can just be cleaned, and that's enough, cleaned well. And if you're not sure if there's anything in this, to spray with a cleaner that makes it taste bad, then you're okay. Also, the back should be covered with metal. Now under that back, see in the back of this oven, there's a vent. Okay, if you got to make sure you cut open the foil to let the vent from the bottom from the oven vent out. If you don't, you're going to melt your whole computer, and I know that because I did it myself. And I melted my whole computer first time I made Paisach. So right under here, there's a vent. And you got to just make sure you let it vent out. Okay?
Rebbe, if Rebbe wants to text it to me, I could post it to the chat.
Okay, I should text you now. Okay.
Do you have to leave the stove top not used for 24 hours before?
No, you do not have to. The only reason you have to leave, only when you're koshering with water, that's an excellent question. Only when you kosher with water do you have to wait 24 hours before. If you're koshering with fire, you don't have to wait 24 hours before koshering. There's an essential difference between koshering with water and koshering with fire. Water is basically you're taking the taste that got absorbed in the metal and you're pulling it out with the water. When you're koshering with fire, the fire is going into the metal and it's burning it out. So therefore, you don't have to wait 24 hours. That's also why if you're koshering on Paisach itself, for Ashkenazim, are not allowed to kosher with water on Paisach, and Svardim are allowed to, but that's for a different reason. But for fire, if you want to kosher with fire, then even on Paisach, Ashkenazim can kosher. Yeah. Okay. So that's basically the stove top. Also relatively simple. At least that's what I think. And then the oven.
Does the pot that's on top of the grate being used to kosher the grate does it need to be a Paisach pot?
Excellent question. It doesn't make a difference which one it is. Right? It doesn't make a difference which one it is. You can use Paisach or you can use chametz.
Sorry, could you just say one more time how to kosher the grates on the stovetop?
Okay, so you got two ways. One, you could put into a self-clean, which I don't really advise. First of all, it'll take.
You mean the self-clean oven?
In a self-clean oven, you could put it in there, but it might make if it's enamel coated, so then it might, or whatever coating you have, it might melt it because a self-clean oven gets very, very hot. The other way is just basically take a pot that's pretty large, like a frying pan, put some water in it so it doesn't burn out your frying pan, meaning the biggest pot you have that will spread the fire out the most, or use heavy-duty aluminum foil that will cover over each burner, right? And then you turn on the flame on high for 10 to 15 minutes, and that will kosher. That's it. That's all you have to do. And then move your heavy-duty foil over to the next burner and do that. You could do 2 burners at once. I do not do 4 burners at once. It gets very, very hot. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much.
If you use to be clean first.
They do not really. They should. If you see actual chametz like on it, then I would tell you to clean it. Other than that, you don't have to. I'm trying to read as many texts as I can that are getting through to me. I can't see the ones that are posted on the chat, so if somebody can send them to me, then I'll do that. Glass covered stoves are a big issue. If you text me afterwards, I'll send you out exactly how to do that. You can use a blech. I don't know if I said that before. You can use a chametz blech to do this. That would probably be the easiest way to do it. Blechs, if you have a chametz blech, it's probably better to get a new blech. But now that it's difficult with all that, we want to minimize the shopping as much as we can. So you can just really clean it well and then burn it out on both sides, or double cover it. Okay? So that's that. So glass top, the issue with a glass top or electric stove top is you can turn each burner on high for 10 to 15 minutes. That will kosher it. However, in between, right? Meaning the pots usually stretch out. They go out way over the electric burner, the source of the electric. So that can't be koshered. The only way they can be koshered if you cover it over and turn on the heat. But if you do that, you're going to probably bust your glass. So that's a big issue. So the way the Star Case says to do it, and CRC, as far as I know, everybody says to do this. If you have a glass top, then you turn each burner on for 10, 15 minutes, and then you got to get these little metal trivets in order to rest the pot on it so that the pot does not rest directly on top of the oven. If it slips off on Paisach or whatever it is, and we already discussed it for the Evid, it's going to be okay. Right? Okay, so that's the stove top. The oven itself is, if you have self-clean, then you just put it on self-clean and that's it. Moshe Feinstein held that 700 degrees is Liban Gomer, and our self-clean ovens do get as high as 700. Some of them, they really should get to be about 900, they say, but it varies. But one self-clean cycle is enough. You don't have to clean the oven before you self-clean it. The self-clean will just burn everything out, and all you have to do is wipe down the residue that's inevitably going to be there, and then you're fine with the self-clean. That will kosher the grates too. If you don't have a self-cleaner, that's a big issue. Not having self-clean, Moshe Feinstein held you cannot kosher. You can't kosher an oven that doesn't have self-clean. They say in the name of Rabbi Aaron Kotler, and this is what everybody, and you do not have to wait 24 hours before self-clean again, because anytime you kosher with fire, you can just do it right away. You don't have to wait.
You can't just leave it on broil or something for.
So that's
whatever.
the question. So it's a big controversy whether to kosher not with self-clean. That's why if you have the self-clean option, you have to kosher with self-clean, even if there's a chance that you're going to break your oven. Somebody today was asking me that he knows it's going to get broken. If you know it's going to get broken, then you don't have to use a self-clean. If sometimes they say that if you self-clean too many times, it breaks your oven, which it does, because I know that from my own ovens. But you got to at least try. If it's only a suffix, then it should, you're doing a mitzvah, hopefully it'll work.
And if they only have the broil setting?
So if you only have broil setting, then lamaisa, you have to clean it well. That you're going to have to use elbow grease. You're going to have to clean it well and spray it with a cleaner like Easy Off or something like that. And then you turn it on high for an hour or 2. 2 hours would be better, and that will kosher it. Okay?
So
again, that is
setting.
What? The hottest 500, 550, whatever it is.
Well,
that
broil the hottest?
What?
I don't know, oven. So
well, broil, it's different. Different ovens have different things. Broil or whatever it is. That did not work. Moshe Feinstein did not hold of that, which is why we don't prefer it. But the bottom line is, the minhag in America is that works. Now, it's interesting because the reason why maybe ovens don't work, right? Why are we so machmir with the oven? Because in the old days, when they cooked with ovens, the food went straight up against the oven. Our ovens don't do that. We're always cooking in pans, and most of the time those pans are covered. And on Paisach, they're also covered. So therefore, we have room to be a lot more makel with these ovens, even though theoretically it may not work exactly halachically the way we'd want it. But the bottom line is, if you have a regular oven, you don't have to get an insert, and you can just kosher it that way. Again, clean it well, and then turn it on for about 2 hours would be the best. There are some that say that you should put a can of water in it while you're cleaning it. If you want, you could do that, but it's not necessary. Okay, those are the hard parts of the kitchen. Kitchen table, the minhag is to cover it with something thick, if you can.
Just to interrupt, if you do anything to the oven door.
Oh, good. Thank you. You reminded me of the oven door. Yes. If you just do a regular oven without self-clean, then you should cover the oven door with foil. If you do a self-clean, most places can say you don't have to cover the door with foil, but many say that it doesn't really work, and the self-clean does not get to the door. So many even with self-clean do cover the door. No, the inside. We're talking about the inside of the door. You want to cover the entire inside of the door. Again, it's a chumrah.
Rebbe, what about the rubber gasket?
Yeah, so the rubber gasket, some say is a problem too, but l'maisa, we paskin that it's fine. You don't have to cover the rubber gasket. Just spray it up and clean it well, and then you're fine. And the inside does not have to be covered. The machmirim do cover. I personally do cover it. But if you're making your first Paisach, it can get pretty stressful to cover it. So if that's causing stress, then just spray it up, and then you'll be fine. The range hood, thank you. Somebody just posted that. I just see as they come. If I happen to notice it, then I'll answer it. I believe the range hood has to be covered because the steam goes up, and then there's a lot of chomet steam on there, and then you're cooking with your kosher Pesach stuff, and the steam goes up and pulls it back down. Push comes to shove, it'll be okay. I think you should just cover it over with
If you have a
silver
professional hood that you could take out the baffles and put them in the dishwasher, can you do that?
I have no idea what you're talking about, but it sounds good to me. It sounds good to
the
me.
Actual filters come out.
You should wash it. You should wash it with something, maybe more than dishwashing. So like clean it with a good cleaner, and then that would be okay.
By covering the range hood, you mean blocking it from
blocking
completely,
it, yes.
Or you're not just like coating the inside with foil?
No. The range, anything above the counters, anything where you open the pot and the steam, comes out, like you open the cholent right under a countertop, and that steam goes straight into the cabinet that's above. So that could be real chametz. So any
Is that a chumrah or? I'm sorry,
is it? I could just say, and the Sefer from Rashul Kamenetsky says this is not necessary. I can't say I clearly understand. So if he says it, we certainly can rely on it, and you don't have to cover it. I'm just telling you what I do. I personally believe that you should cover it. But again, we're trying to minimize the stress. So therefore, if it's going to cause a stress, then it's fine.
Yaakov, Andy's been waiting to ask your questions, Yaakov.
Who's waiting? Who's waiting?
Go ahead.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Tisha Kaddish. Anyhow,
how are you?
Okay, so I have a double oven, right? The top oven is a self-clean. The bottom oven is not. The bottom oven looks like it should be like a warming drawer, but it's not. It's an actual oven. Right. It only goes up to 450, and it does not have a self-cleaning option.
Right.
Can it be
use that a
kosher?
lot? Do you use
We
that?
use it for dairy. Yeah.
I would tell you it's probably better not to use it on Pesach. Is that going to be a stress?
It'll be a stress, but we'll make it work.
Okay, so then the way you could kosher it is to clean it very well, and then to take a couple of sternos and put it in there, and that should raise the heat to very high, and then that would kosher it.
Sternos while it's on to 450, you're saying?
I'm not so sure because it might melt the sternos. Maybe put a couple of sternos in there without it, and then that would that should raise the temperature.
Ideally not to use it. Ideally,
yes.
It's impossible to kosher.
Yeah, I'd say impossible, but it's yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Warming drawers, most kashrus agencies, whatever, say that you cannot kosher warming drawer. It does not get hot enough to kosher. Therefore, you should not use warming drawers on Pesach. Sorry about that. If it's a stress, let me know, and then you can also do the sterno thing that we just discussed, and then therefore it's and that would work. Okay.
What about a plata?
Plata. So plata is a common question. Some say not to kosher platas. I don't see why not. You can just clean it very well, and then turn it on and pour boiling hot water all over it. That should kosher it. If not, then just cover it. Double cover it preferably. I don't think that should mess it up, but check with the manufacturer to see, and then you can use it. Right? The oven racks without self-clean plata is a hot plate. Plata is a hot plate. Oven racks without self-clean will also be koshered when you just leave them in the oven. Okay? Any more oven questions?
How do I deal with the vent that's attached to the microwave that's over the range?
Yeah, so I have that same thing. I just cover it with foil and that's it. But if it's going to stress you out, so then just clean it and then it's okay. Microwaves, most microwaves have way too many nooks and crannies and all that to kasher. If it's plastics, and we don't kasher plastic, so then really you can't kasher. And the door is glass. I personally go with that. You should not kasher microwaves. Normally on a normal Paisach, let's say you just go buy a microwave for $30, $40. That's the way my father used to say, just do that. But this year is obviously not like other years. So if necessary, and you have a metal inside of a microwave, then you could kasher it, wait 24 hours, clean it very well, and then boil up hot water in there. The glass, which most round tables and microwaves are glass, so then that you should really get rid of or cover, because we don't kasher glass for Paisach, which we'll get to in a minute, I hope, in a few minutes. Okay? Kitchen table, you should cover it. Yeah?
Koshering a microwave stam during the year is different than koshering for Pesach?
Yes, it's different. It's different because, first of all, we kasher plastic, we kasher all year round. Same as for microwave convection would be, well, if you put it on convection, maybe it would work. Yeah, I would direct you, if you have microwave or there's different types and different models, I would direct you to call Star K or check their book, because they have, depending on what types of microwaves and convections and all that, they have different ways of koshering it. Not that everybody agrees with it, but you certainly can rely on them. Okay, so the table should be covered with something thick. It shouldn't be that big a deal. Tablecloths can be washed with hot water, and that's kosher. You don't need to put anything on top of it. Same thing with towels, same thing with oven mitts or anything like that. Just put it into the wash on hot. It's got to be on hot. If it's going to damage it, which some people have asked, so then you can't do it on hot, then you shouldn't use that. Those faux leather, fake leather tablecloths, I'm not exactly sure what you do with that. I guess you can pour hot water all over it and that will kosher it, but it's plastic, so really you probably shouldn't use that and just cover it. Ice makers, if you clean it well, you can use the ice maker. You just got to make sure you clean it well, because sometimes inside, there's chametz all year round. There's little drops of little not drops, but little crumbs of chametz that can end up in your ice. You don't want little crumbs of chametz in your ice. Okay. The refrigerator, just have to clean, and that's it. Nothing else to do. Some have the minhag of lining it, but that's not necessary. That's going to cause a stress. Also, if you are lining it, make sure there's air to go from one to the next, because otherwise the air won't circulate in your refrigerator, and then you might mess up the fridge and or mess up your food. Cabinets and all that, also just clean, spray it, and then you're done. And if you want, you can line the bottoms of it, but that's really just a very big chumrah. Okay, I think that's the basics for the kitchen. Yeah, we're good with that. Okay, glass table. We don't kasher glass for Pesach unless you're Sephardi.
The gas cooktop.
What?
The gas cooktop. If it's cast iron grates, could that be kosher?
Cast iron could be kosher, sure.
What
Yeah.
way?
What's considered thick
What
for
way?
a tablecloth?
How do you do it?
What's considered thick? Anything that if it spills, the spill won't penetrate.
So can I put
sometimes you have
foil on-
plastic.
Like
If you have
two
a plastic
layers of
tablecloth and you spill water on it, it's going to penetrate that plastic. You want something thick that the liquid won't penetrate. Okay?
So 2 layers of foil over my fake leather tablecloth is fine?
Yes.
1 layer? Okay.
Yes. 100%. Okay, now with cleaning the rest of the house.
Cast iron.
What about dishwashers?
Oh, dishwashers is a no-go. It's very, very schwer to kasher dish. The OU has a way to do it. If I tell you how to do it, you'll probably shut off this year when I tell you how to do it according to the OU. Okay, but so it's really we don't kasher dishwashers. First of all, most of them are plastic. Many of them are plastic. But even if they're metal, you'd have to reheat the water. Basically, you have to heat up a stone, put it into the dishwasher, put it on a run like that. It's wild. So I wouldn't touch the dishwasher. You kasher cast iron the same way you kasher any other metal. You can kasher cast iron.
A regular urn, a hot water urn, if you want.
Okay, so hot water urn, it depends. If you know for sure you don't use it near chametz, most of them have plastic on the outside. So if you know that you put it for soups, tradition soups and these type of things, then you should just put it away and get a new one. This year, though, since it's a stressful time, so if you know that you didn't really use it too much with chametz, so then just clean it very well, and then pour hot water around on the outside, and then you should be okay.
What about a barbecue?
Barbecue, impossible, almost impossible to kasher. The only way you could do it is fill it up with coals, and then burn all the coals till they get red hot. That would kasher it. You could do that with leaving the grates, and then you have to clean the top very well. I wouldn't advise it though. I would tell you to get barbecue.
Even a gas barbecue?
Even a gas. Yes, I'm talking about a gas. You know how much fats and chametz is in there. It's almost impossible to clean it out.
What about an instant hot?
Instant hots, the Paisach say not to use. They say not to use the instant hots because it's too hard to kasher. Although I don't see why you can't. If you just pour hot water all around the outside, then you'll be okay. Okay. Now,
what about the top of the stove after you kasher the grates? Does that have to be covered?
The top. What do you mean by the top of the stove?
When you put the blech down and you turn on one flame at a time.
Right.
You're kashering the grates, but what about the metal underneath that?
No, the metal underneath should be covered with a heavy-duty aluminum foil. Yeah, it should. Yeah.
Can you use a sous vide on Paisach?
Can you use what? Can't hear you.
Can you use a sous vide on Paisach like you use throughout the year?
Yeah, it's a sous vide. Can you use a sous vide? If you know that you didn't use it with chametz, which is most sous vides, then I would say that you can. The problem is that you stick them into sinks with all sorts of other chametz, et cetera, et cetera. So therefore, that's a little bit of an issue. If you could somehow cover it, then that would be okay. Okay. But if you're not sure, then I would say not to use it. Because anything that has like these cracks and these little crevices and all these little things in it that can't be cleaned, you really can't kasher for Paisach. So it really depends on how you use it, which is very good because that reminds me of something that I wanted to discuss. What about kashering metal, the kais and all that type of thing? Can you kasher that? So first of all, does it even need to be kashered? Because the kais is not used with hot, right? And so if it's not used with hot, it's not really chametz. The problem is that sometimes it sits in the sink. And sometimes it could sit in the sink for 24 hours, especially if it's the husband that was asked to wash the dishes, right? And he says he's doing it, and then it sits there for 24 hours, and 24 hours is considered cooking, right? So it can be an issue. So we do allow kashering of anything, metal, kaises, and all that type of thing. We kasher. What you do is you take, again, our good old kashering pot, same as before, either kasher before or kasher after if it's a Paisach pot, and then you just boil up the hot water, drop in the kais, let it sit in there because it's going to cool off the boiling until the water stops boiling because the cold comes in and drops the temperature. And then you wait till it reboils, and then you just pull it out and wash it in hot water, and then it is kashered, right? And you can do that with pretty much anything else you want to do. What
is that, a silver coat you're talking about?
Silver, yeah, anything metal. Okay, now that brings it to another important situation, which is pacifiers, baby bottles, and all these type of things. Okay, so normally they're not used with boiling hot chametz. Problem is that, again, you put them into the sink and you leave them in there. So on a normal year, and this is what I've been answering, but I think today I decided to change my mind. But you got to just get new pacifiers, new baby bottles, and all that. Even if you're going to use it for formula, which, by the way, most formula is kitnius. So if you're going to use formula for kids, then you should use the bottles and wash the bottles in the bathroom sink, not in your regular sinks. Again, unless you are Sephardi, in which case it's all fine. It's much easier to be Sephardi for Paisach. So if anybody wants to be Megayer before Paisach, be a smart idea. It's much easier to be a Sephardi. But if you're not a Sephardi, which I think most are not here, so you watch the kitnius. And Ashkenaz you are allowed to own kitnius and you're allowed to benefit from kitnius. We just don't eat kitnius. Okay, but the question is, but kashering the bottle. So normally we say we don't kasher plastic. So therefore you got to buy new bottles and stuff. But I think now this year that it's becoming a stress. So I think we can kasher plastic. We can rely on the opinions that say that you are allowed to kasher plastic, not like Rav Moshe Feinstein, but that you can kasher plastic. So just clean the bottles, pacifier as well, boil up a pot of hot water, and dip them all in, and you can use that for Paisach.
Again, it should be a chametz pot or a pizza.
If it's a chametz, it can, as long as the pot hasn't been used for 24 hours, it could be any type of pot. Okay, it could be any type of pot.
Jacob, that's only on extreme circumstances. Obviously, you should try to get new pacifiers, right?
If you can get it, if you can order from Amazon and get it from Amazon and you can afford it, then fine. If not, then just you can kosher it. Okay.
Is it considering that during the year we wash our baby bottles with the same sponge that we wash our regular dishes, chametz and all?
Right. So that's even though if you want to go with the ikar halacha, since it wasn't washed with boiling hot, it's really not going to be chametz. But we are machmer for Paisach to do that. So that's what I'm saying. We're using a combination here. The combination is that most poskim or many poskim hold you can kosher plastic, and really you don't need to kosher it at all. So for chumrah the Paisach, we normally would tell you to get new bottles, new pacifiers, whatever it is. But this year we could be makel to at least kosher it, right? Okay, so that's that. Now, when I get to cleaning the house, okay, let's get to this. This is important. Okay, any place that you don't normally bring chametz into, you don't have to check for chametz. So therefore, if you have a closet, like even if it's not a walk-in closet, but let's say it's a walk-in closet, and you know that nobody ever goes in there with chametz, so then you would not have to check that at all. And even a regular closet where you know you don't go in with chametz, then you don't have to check it, including your drawers and all those type of things. Unless you think you put chametz into your pockets and then those pockets go into the drawer, then you might have to check the drawers. Other than that, you really don't have to. Okay? And basically what you got to do is just, in bookshelves, just check under the bookshelves and, on top of the books. The books themselves do not have to be checked. There are machmirim that hold that they do, but Lamaisa, most persons say you don't have to, unless you know you're going to bring the book to the table. If you know you bring your books to the table, then you should check the book. Okay? And so you go through the room and just check it, sweep it out, and check it, and that's all. And then when bedikas chametz, which I thought maybe we discussed tonight, but we're not going to have time, so we'll deal with that later. Exactly.
What about broom and dustpan?
Yeah, so a broom and a dustpan, me'ikar adin, you just knock out the broom, and then you're okay. Many have the minhag to buy a new broom and a new dustpan. You do not have to keep that minhag this year, because again, we want to keep you at home for as much as possible to stay home. So just go outside and knock off the broom, and then that would be.
Rebbe, somebody forwarded something to me that Rebbe sent out that said that the vacuum bag needs to be thrown out. That's really sad.
Yes, the vacuum bag has to be thrown out just simply because you can have accumulated chametz in there. So therefore, you just want to throw it out. If you can, listen. It's a chumrah, but if you can't, then you can't. I don't see why you wouldn't have to throw out the vacuum bag.
What if you have little kids who could put anything anywhere?
Yeah, so if you have little kids, then everything is fair game, and you have to check everything.
Jacob, did anybody have to make myself a sugar with the garbage cans or no?
So normally you want to at least clean out the garbage cans and make sure there's no chametz in there. Yeah, you do want to at least do some sort of cleaning of it. But the bottom line is, me'ikar adin, it's not an issue. It's not really edible, so then it's okay. All right?
Can we just pour bleach in it and call it a day?
You can pour bleach in and call it a day, 100%. Yeah.
What about chametz gamar in a year that you usually wouldn't sell?
Okay, so I just want to did I miss anything with the basic cleaning, or we're good with that? Yeah?
Can I just ask Rebbe one question? I think I misheard something. I think I just misheard something about the pot. No, sorry, the boiling water pot that you use to kosher. Does that need to be unused for 24 hours?
It has to be unused from hot for 24 hours.
The boiling water pot that you use to kosher for the sink, for example.
Yes, you should not use that for 24 hours.
Okay.
Yes. Some have a minhag to kosher it. It's a chametz pot. Some have the minhag to kosher it. An urn, again, an urn, it depends on how you used it. If you used it with chametz, like for the soups and all that type of thing, then you should probably just get a new one. But again, it's difficult to get new ones now. So then just pour hot water on the outside, and that will kosher it or clean it well also.
Do you have to move a refrigerator and oven and check underneath them?
Thank you. That's a good question. Anything, there's a halacha. See, I would like to do more background, but we don't, because of all this craziness, we don't really have time. But there's a halacha that let's say you have a piece of chametz, and then you have a brick wall and fall down on top of your chametz. right? Do you have to, and this happened at Paisach, do you have to go hire workers, or even you yourself, dig out that piece of chametz from under that pile of stones? So the halacha is that if a dog can't get to it, that's the basic halacha. Then if a dog would not be able to dig it out, then you don't have to go after it, because it's not, you won't be able to get to it. Okay? So the same thing is any appliance that never moves in your house has the same halacha. So even if you knew 100% that somebody threw chametz behind your oven and behind your refrigerator, if you know you never move them, then you don't have to go check behind there. However, couches do get moved as far as I know, so therefore if you know you have chametz behind the couch, you would have to move it, or a desk, or anything that gets moved. Again, that's the basic rule. If it doesn't move, you don't have to check behind it. If it does move, then you have to. Okay?
Quick question, could be I missed the water kettle you use the whole year. What's with that?
What do you mean? What do you mean by water kettle?
The water you boil for coffee and stuff like that.
Yeah, so if you use it for chametz near there, then it's a problem. So then you'd have to kasher it. And it's not so simple, especially if they're plastic on the outside.
It's mainly glass. The whole thing is like glass. And
so glass, then you really can't kasher glass. Ashkenazim don't kasher glass. So it's best to get a new one. You can theoretically cover it if you have to. But if you have any specific situation, get a hold of me and we'll figure something out. Now, how do you kasher a regular pot? That was the text that just came through. A regular pot. So if you want to kasher an actual pot for Paisach, then you just fill it up. You can't use it for 24 hours. Make sure it's clean. Fill it up to the top with boiling hot water. But you got to make sure that the outside gets kasher too, at least the top. So the way to do that is to heat up a little bit of metal and then drop it into the pot, and then that will boil over the pot, and therefore that will kasher the tops of it, and then you're kasher. Or take that small pot and put it into a large pot, which is not really going to work because if it's a very large pot. There is an interesting thing. I think we said this once before, but you don't have to kasher a pot all at once. It's not tfilas keilim. Tfilas keilim, you got to put the whole kli inside the water at the same time. Kashering, you can kasher piece by piece. If it's too big, like you put in one end and put in the other end. Kashering dishes, it depends what the dishes made out of. Most dishes are not kasherable, so therefore you can't really kasher dishes. If it's metal, then you can kasher. Almost everything else you can't kasher. Okay? Now, selling chametz gomer, okay?
If I want to kasher a pot and I want to do it in my sink, should I kasher the sink first or the pot first?
What do you mean you want to kasher a pot in your sink? What do you mean?
Yeah, like pour boiling water over it.
If you want to kasher your sink or the pot?
The pot. Do I have?
Why don't you just kasher the pot on the stovetop?
I don't know. There's a bunch of pieces. I just want to pour boiling water over it.
No, you see, if it's a pot, you can't pour hot water to kasher a pot. The rule is the way the taste goes into the pot, it's the way it goes out. So if you boil chametz in a pot, the only way to get the chametz out of the pot is to boil water in the pot. You can only pour water to kasher things if the way the chametz went in was pouring, meaning a sink. How does chametz get into a sink? You don't cook in the sink. What you do is you pour from a pot into the sink. So therefore, the way to kasher thing is by pouring hot water onto the sink. You follow what I'm saying? Same thing with the counter. The way the chametz goes, you don't cook on the counter. It's always a kli sheni or poured from a kli rishon that goes into a counter. So therefore, the way you kasher is by pouring, right? But a pot that the chametz goes in directly in the pot, the only way to kasher it is to boil water in the pot. I hope I'm being clear. I think, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Okay, so that you'd have to kasher it on the stovetop.
Quick
So can you use a blowtorch for the sink? Can you use a blowtorch?
If you know how to use a blowtorch, that's the best way to kasher. But you better know how to use that blowtorch, because if you don't, you can do some serious damage.
But it's fine because it's not water. Meaning we said before it has to be the same way. So why is it?
No, very good. But it can be the same way or a stronger way. Fire is a much stronger way to kasher than water. So
got it.
So fire always works. You can always do a higher level of kashering. Fire is the best. So therefore, fire will kasher anything. The sous vide, I'm getting texts about the sous vide. The sous vide, if you don't put it into the sink and it only stays in the water and you only cook meat with it, so then I don't see why you can't just clean it very well and then use that sous vide, sous vide for Paisach.
Clarification.
Now,
you just blowtorch the entire pot?
Yes, you can blowtorch the entire pot. Yes, 100%. I think it's probably easier to kasher with water personally, but you can blowtorch it if that really floats your boat. You can do that.
What about a cast iron pan?
A who?
A cast iron pan.
Same thing. You can kasher that. Cast iron. Well, you mean you're using it just straight without any sort of liquid? Meaning when you cook in the what do you cook? What are you cooking in the cast iron pan?
Steaks, sauces, chicken.
So as long as it's cooked with liquid, then you kasher it the same way. You could just fill it up with hot water. The only problem is if you only fry in there and you don't fry it with any sort of oil, then it's going to need a blowtorch.
It's always.
Right, so I don't know who's out there with the blowtorch, but get his number and ask him to come over.
If you're koshering a pot, not to use on Paisach, but to use in order to kosher other things, like to dunk your kos in there or to pour over the sink. So that also needs to do the koshering where it overflows over the edges?
No, good question. No, for that you don't have. It's just a chumrah to kasher for that. So then you just boil up the hot water and then pour it out.
To the top.
You don't. Yeah.
Okay.
You don't know. That's a good question. Thank you.
While I'm self cleaning my oven, can I just stick pots in there since I can use fire and just call it a day?
Yes, you can, but just make sure that the pots can withstand that type of heat. The halacha is also that if the koshering is going to damage the utensil that you're koshering, then you're not allowed to kosher it because we're afraid that you're going to we're afraid that you're not going to kosher correctly because you don't want it to get broken. But that's not, most pots will withstand that. Okay? All right, so now a few other things just to discuss that are coming up a lot. What's with selling chametz gomer this year? All right, so a lot of people and a lot of Paisach have said that you can sell sell chametz gomer this year. I don't see personally why we should. Certainly, you should not stock up on chametz because you're afraid that there's going to be Armageddon right after Paisach and there's going to be nothing around. It seems like everything will be around. I don't believe anyways that's a Jewish thing to do, but that's a different schmooze for a different time. You're here to hear about Pesach, not to hear about my opinions about hoarding food from grocery stores. But it's you shouldn't buy chametz. If your minig is to sell chametz gomer, which by the way, according to halacha, everybody holds that you are allowed. The halacha is you're allowed to sell any type of chametz. Many people have a minig not to. Maybe we can have another shir on that, but that's a whole different shir for a different time. But the bottom line is the ikar halach is you're allowed to sell chametz gomer. Just people have a minig not to, because they don't want to rely on leniencies, which is a fine minig. But if you feel that you need or you stocked up on a lot of chametz and it's going to be a loss for you, then 100% you should sell your chametz gomer.
What do you mean? What constitutes chametz gomer? Sorry, I'm not such a
chametz gomer is basically breads, anything in the bread family, pastas, and oatmeal, cereals. That's basically it. Everything else, ketchups, mustard, that's not chametz gomer. Any mixture of chametz where there's a little bit of chametz gomer is not considered chametz gomer.
And
right,
food.
Mayonnaise, what else? Mayonnaise, condiments, most condiments, pickles, all that type of stuff.
So that you normally wouldn't sell, but with
that you could there's no reason. There's no reason not to sell that stuff. There's really absolutely no reason not to sell it every year. Okay, alcohol, according to most, is chametz gomer. Again, so if it's basically the way the poskim that I'm involved with say is that you should not stock up chametz gomer for this year. But if you do have a considerable amount because you did stock up, you're not required to take a loss for that. You sell chametz gomer. You do not need to be mater neder. Even though every other year you don't sell chametz gomer, if you decide to sell chametz gomer this year, you don't have to be mater neder. You cannot order. You want to be a wise guy, right? So you know that everybody's behind in the orders. So you go onto a website in the middle of Chalamoy to order all your chametz, right? So you cannot do that. Okay. At least
did you cover
the way the situation is now.
Yet?
What?
Sorry, did you cover beer chametz yet?
We did not cover beer chametz yet. We're gonna have more shiurim hopefully. Well, I thought it was gonna be one more, but based on timing, we can have as many as we need. I don't mind doing this.
Let's hope these are clean shiurim.
Yes, we'll have to make sure it doesn't go out on Twitter. Okay, it ain't gonna go out on Twitter. Okay, fine. Okay, so that's that with the chametz gomer. Tfilas kalim, just again, we discussed it a little bit, but tfilas kalim, many communities have shut their.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can we go back to the chametz gomer for 1 second? I'm sorry. Is there a gather that we should go to that we typically wouldn't do?
You can. What do you mean? If you
I mean, if my minhag is usually not anything but beyond booze.
Right.
This year, would you allow more?
You can, but it really would depend on how much chametz you have. If you have like 4 boxes of macaroni and a box of cereal, and that's basically it, so then why not eat it? Why not eat it before? If you have a lot that you stocked up, and it will be a loss to you, which for everybody that's it's subjective. So for some guys, $10 could be a loss. For somebody else, it could be $1,000. Then sell it. Yeah, there is a little bit more room for leniency this year, just because many people did stock up, and it would be a loss, and many people are having problems financially. So, yeah, there is room to be more lenient this year, 100%.
Does it make a difference if it's half eaten, if there's a half a box of cereal?
Makes no difference. You can sell any chametz you want, half eaten or whatever it is. I don't know, half-eaten bowl of cereal, that I don't know about.
A box.
I understand. I'm saying half a box of cereal. Yes, they will. Yes.
Is it better to throw it out?
We sell the guy the chametz at a discount. Which is why he would want to buy it, even if it's a half a box, because he would get a considerable discount if he decides to carry through on the sale and come after Paisach and buy your chametz. He would get a deal for that, so they would be willing to buy a half a box or something like that. The Tfilas Kalim, now the issue is that I'm sure there's people are from all over, but in Far Rockaway the mikvahs are still open. Many mikvahs in Baltimore and in Queens, they shut down the Kalim mikvahs. We in Far Rockaway, based on doctors, have chlorine in the mikvah, and they have guidelines where only one person at a time, etc., etc. So therefore, we can't in Far Rockaway rely on all these major leniencies that the other towns are relying on, which is perfectly fine. Doesn't mean we disagree with those towns' leniencies. They have no choice. We in Far Rockaway also have this big ocean, if you're not familiar with, and you can be tribal in that. So therefore, we don't really have. It's not enough of a shas atchak to allow you to be mafker your kelim and give it to a guy and all that type of things. Even though we can, depending on the situation, we can rely on that. Like if somebody's quarantined and they can't get out, we would rely on it. But for the most people, you could just go to the ocean. Anyways, it's good to get out a little bit and go.
You can see what's on there.
So what could you do to be mafker? How do you mafker it?
I don't know, but he just only went.
How do you mafker it? So you need to be mafker in front of 3 people. It's better. It's certainly better to give it to a guy and borrow it back if you can. The other thing to do is be mafker it, but you can't find 3 people because we're all quarantined. So the Paisach was saying you could be mafker it on Zoom. And then basically what you do is you mafker it and then you put it out on the street for a few minutes and then you go back and get it. Now, basically that pot is not yours, it's hefker. So if you know your friend is doing this shtick and you need to get yourself some pots for free, just walk into his house and take his pots, okay? Because it's hefker. If the guy holds on to it, then the whole thing is a scam, right? So I'm not advising that you should do this, but that's the way that's working.
And giving it to a guy, we can give it to a guy over if they're not actually there.
That's a problem. That's a problem because really the guy needs to pick it up. So it's probably better to do hefker than to give it to the guy.
What about selling it to a guy? The same way you sell the chametz, you sell your
right.
Pesach
So you could
pots.
So you could sell it to a guy. The problem is that we're not selling the chametz to the guy till Erev Pesach, and I imagine most people are cooking with their pots before Erev Pesach. Otherwise, that would be a good idea to include it in the mechiras chametz. Although the Paisach do discuss that if you sell your pots to the guy in mechiras chametz, all your regular chametz pots, then maybe you have to tovel everything in your house right after Pesach. Right, because it belonged to a guy and now it went back to a yid. But again, that's a different subject for a different time.
Yeah, but the chametz pots are being sold. It's not the pots itself; it's anything that's in the pots. Here on Pesach stuff, I'm actually selling the actual pots.
Correct. No, but a lot of mechiras do sell the actual pots. Right, they do sell the actual pots.
There is some Rav who's selling the pots to a guy. You can go on his website.
Oh yeah, okay. So I don't know how that.
Can you paste this contact information?
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, one last thing. So you asked about burning the chametz. Yeah. Okay. I gotta stop because I gotta go on to the next year. If anybody wants to do the daf yomi, you can stay tuned. But just one last thing. The daf yomi is unmuted. So. One last thing. So they're talking about not doing biur chametz this year and flushing everything down the toilet. That's because the ikar halacha is that you don't have to burn the chametz. However, there is a specific mitzvah to burn the chametz. The only eitzah that you can do is basically, I don't see why you can't take your chametz grill and put the chametz into the grill and just turn on your grill for a few minutes, and now you burn your chametz that way. There's nothing illegal about that, and you won't make any sort of chilul Hashem. That being said, don't try and roast 4 or 5 bagels and in your barbecue grill. Meaning, make sure you eat enough chametz before, and then just leave over a kizayis. You should have at least a kizayis to burn.
But if you live in an apartment, you can't go out.
Okay, so if you don't have that, then the rabbis have all weighed in and said that this year you just flush it down the toilet and that's it. If you have a neighbor,
what am I flushing though? Like,
what about a fireplace? Burning the
no, you
chametz
want to take the challah that you put out by bedikas chametz. The challah you put out by bedikas chametz, you put it out, or whatever challah bread, you put out the 10 pieces, and then when you collect it, and then the next morning, instead of burning it, you go flush it down the toilet. Yes.
Oh, that's
make sure
that's
that
the
you don't
chametz
plug
you're
your
talking
toilet.
about.
Make sure you only have small amounts of chametz. Don't flush large amounts of chametz.
You're speaking of that specifically.
Yeah. Okay. So we can maybe try and figure out to put an additional share in there. Otherwise, the next year will be either Sunday or Monday, depending on what the gaboyim say. It's been a pleasure, and everybody should stay safe. And whatever learning we did, for all those that need a refuah shalem.
Thank you.
Amen. Tzvi Yaakov?
Yeah.
Tzvi Yaakov?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, hello. Question. We recently purchased, it's a new trend, a chametz, bedikas chametz set that with pre-bagged chametz. Every chametz is in a tiny plastic numbered bag so that you shouldn't lose track.
That's a good thing.
The problem is due to the situation we find ourselves in, flushing down the toilet. I'm afraid to flush bits of plastic, chametz wrapped in tiny bits of plastic down the toilet.
Okay, you know what? You'll text me later or tomorrow, or call me when we get closer to Paisach. We'll figure it out. I'm sure somebody on your block is going to have a barbecue grill and you can give it to them. If not, then you just throw it out. I'm sure there's garbage men that are going to be coming around.
Toss it in the trash.
I'm sure there's a garbage men, and then they could.
Can I just simply toss it into the trash after a week from now, after the bedika is over, and I just say it tomorrow. Let the trash men. It's going to go into the furnace, I suppose.
Yeah.
Just
you could do that.
Due to inconveniences of the
100%.
of the time. Yeah.
Okay.
If you
I'm
guys
signing
want,
off.
If you want, the share will be posted on YouTube. I posted the link down below.
I'll send out a link.
Ready.
Okay. It's a pleasure.
Good night, everybody.
Have a good night.
I posted
Good night. Stay safe.
The Daf Yomi share is posted on
Good
the
enough.
group.